All right, guys, are there any questions over any of the assignments thus far? Any questions over anything we've done so far? Questions over anything we've done so far?
No, sir.
Okay. Huh?
I said I would have a question. I was here.
That's fine. We can go over it tomorrow. All right, guys. Up here. So, guys, focus up here. So, what we're going over today is writing equations of lines and using them to determine pieces of information that we need. Now, there's two main ways that we can get to an equation of a line. One of them is using the slope-intercept form. And for all of the equation of a line, when it asks us to find the equation of a line, we want our answer to finish up in this form here, y equals mx plus b. This is our slope-intercept form. Slope-intercept form. And the reason they call this slope-intercept form is because the m stands for slope and b is the y-intercept. M is our slope. This is going to be our slope. And b is the y-intercept, where it crosses the y-axis. So if we're given the slope and y-intercept, we can use this form here to get it into the form we want. Yes, sir?
How many years have you been teaching?
This is number 8.
Number 8? Dang,
Mhm.
dude, I thought you were. Dang, you've been teaching about half the time I've been alive. For a long time. Hey, did you used to teach it like you? Oh my God,
No.
shut up.
Guys,
That's a
guys, let's focus up. So we'll get through this first, and then I can answer those questions later. Now, this is what the equation of a line that we want to be our final answer. We want to get the y by itself and have the slope and intercept. Now, the other form that we can have is this one here. And this one here is point slope form. So if we're given, or not, guys,
Sorry.
if we are not given the y-intercept, we can use this form here, if we're given a point in the slope, to find the equation of a line. Now, again, the reason I call this point slope is our y1, x1 are the two spots, our point, the point that they're given, the x and y value, and m is still the slope. So it's the slope point form. Now, if we're not given the slope, we can use the equation to find slope, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. We can find the slope and then use point slope form. There's not an actual equation that most likely we would use for 2-point or 2-point form, because it's just taking the equation of a slope, the equation for a slope, and plugging it into the point slope form. So it's not actually giving us a new equation. Any questions on this so far? Okay. Now let's look at the first example here. We can save that for later. We can save that for, guys, hold on to it. We can throw it away later. Okay. So let's look at the first problem here. The graph shows the distance an asteroid travels in x seconds. Write an equation of the line. So the first thing we want to do is write the equation of a line. The second part, we want to interpret the slope. And then we want to figure out how long it takes the asteroid to travel 17,200 miles. It is. So they gave us the equation, or they gave us the graph here. So we want to find the equation of a line, and we want to eventually get to the form of y equals mx plus b. Now they gave us one point for sure, 524. Did they give us another point? 0, 0. So they tell us it starts at 0, 0, and we do have 524. So we can use these 2 points to find the slope and equation of the line. Now to find the slope, m is equal to, so we have our y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And we're going to use this equation here to find the equation, or find the slope. Now we can plug in our y1, y2, and x2 and x1 values. Well, what's one of the y values for our 2 points? So that would be the x. The y value would be 24. Now, since we use 24 first, yes, sir?
This y2 minus y1, x2 minus x1.
Yes.
If we use that in geometry or algebra?
Both.
I'll just want to see.
Yes. Now, whichever y value we put first, its corresponding x has to go first as well. So the corresponding x value with 24 is 5. Now, what's the other y value that we have? 0, and its corresponding x value is 0. Any question? Yes. Because we can do this by hand, so 24 minus 0 is 24. Whoever has the laser pointer, guys. So if we did the subtraction, 24 minus 0 is 24. 5 minus 0 is 5. So the slope for this equation here is 24 over 5. So we found the slope. Now, we can go on and interpret the slope. We're just, in interpreting the slope, you're just changing what the slope is telling us into a word form. Now, 24 represents what? The x or y? 24 is y, so it's representing our distance in miles. The x is our time in. So what this is telling us, 24 over 5, is that for every 5 seconds, every seconds, travels 24 miles.
Whoa. It just turned.
Yeah, until you get pulled over and then you slow down a little bit.
For the interpretation, guys, for the interpretation of the slope, we're wanting something along this here. For every 5 seconds, the asteroid travels 24 miles. That's one of them. So you could rephrase it in different ways, but that's essentially what we want for when we interpret the slope. What is the slope telling us? Or you could say for every second, the asteroid travels 4.8 miles. Because again, it's just what is the slope telling us? And we're putting it in a word form. Okay? Or you can put it. Because for every 5 seconds, it travels 24 miles. So, we interpreted the slope. Now we need to find out what the equation of the line is. Now, if we have the Y-intercept, we can use slope-intercept form. Do we know what the Y-intercept is? What is it? So, if we aren't given the Y-intercept, we can use point-slope form. And point-slope form will always work as long as we have a point in the slope. Now, the point that we have we have two of them. Because we have 0, 0, and 524. Which one do we want to use? Sorry, 24. So 24 over 5, that's our slope, so we can put it in place of m. Now we need to pick one of our 2 points to use for the x1, y1. So we can either use 524 or 0, 0.
Let's do 5. Y.
So 5 would be our x. Yes, no, that's fine. And 24 would be the y. So we're plugging that point in. So we're picking which one we want to use, and then we're plugging it in. Now at this point here, we do need to get y by itself. So the first thing we need to do here is to multiply or distribute the 24 over 5. 24 divided by 5, 24 over 5 times x, is 24 over 5 times x, minus. Now we're going to multiply 24 over 5 by 5. Now on the left-hand side, we'll still have the y minus 24. Now what is 24 over 5 times 5?
5.
Almost. Because this is the same as 5 over 1, yes? So I'm going to do this over here. So 24 over 5 times 5 over 1. And when we multiply, we go straight across. So 24 times 5 over, well, 5 times 1, which is just, well, what's anything divided by itself? 1. So we just get, so for this here, really we get that y minus 24 is equal to 24 over 5x minus 24. It is y by itself. Well, now we need to add 24 because we need to get this officially by itself, and when we add 24, negative 24 plus 24 is 0. Officially getting us y by itself is equal to 24 over 5x. And over here, negative 24 plus 24 is? So this here is the equation for our line. So y is equal to 24 over 5x. Any questions on how we interpret the slope or found the equation of line? Logan, let's save it for later. So, we found the equation of the line, we interpreted the slope. Now we just need to find out how long it takes for this asteroid to travel 17,200 miles. No. Now, distance, again, because x is our time, guys. X is time and y is distance. So to figure this out, we're going to take our equation and replace y with 17,200. Because y is our distance. So if we want to know how long it takes to travel 17,200 miles, we're going to replace y with that amount and then solve for the value of x.
Whatever, 1,700, 17,300 miles,
By
24. And then do the same thing by 5.
other way around.
Divide
By
24 and then times it by 5.
yes. Because what he's doing there is really multiplying both sides by 5 over 24. And that will work for doing this here. Or I could divide both sides by 24 over 5. That'll do the exact same thing. Because when we divide by a fraction, we have to flip it and change it to multiplication. Or we can plug all that into a calculator, and I'd give you the answer. Which gives us 3,583 and 1/3 seconds. So it'll take it about an hour. So it's traveling almost 17,200 miles per hour. Questions on any of this here? Any other questions on this here, guys? Guys? Okay, guys, let's look at the next one. We're looking at the next problem, guys. So this here, the graph shows the remaining balance y on a car loan after making x monthly payments. Write an equation of a line and interpret the slope and y-intercept. What is the remaining balance after 36 payments? So that's what we want to figure out. So we need to write an equation of the line, interpret the slope and y-intercept, and then find the remaining balance after 36 payments. Now, the y-intercept is where the graph crosses the y-axis. The y-intercept will always have an x value of 0. So do we know what the y-intercept is? Because again, the y-intercept is always going to be the point where it crosses the y-axis, and the x value is always going to be 0 at that point. So the y-intercept is 18. So we can use slope-intercept form because the intercept's value is 18. Now we just need to find the slope, and we have the equation. So the y-intercept is what? Is the starting cost of the car. Now, the first part of this here, we're going to address for this question is the y-intercept, because the y-intercept is telling us the starting cost of the car. Because the y-intercept is telling us at 0 months payment, the 0 payments, the car is worth $18,000. So it's the initial cost. Now the slope is going to tell us how much you're paying off per payment or per certain number of payments. Now we can use the slope formula. M is equal to y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And to use this here, we're going to be using 2 points. Now they did give us 2 points. They gave us 0, 18 and 10, 15. Now between these 2 points, we need to pick one of the y values. 10, 15. So the first y value that we'll have is 15 minus. Now again, because we picked 15 first, its corresponding x value has to go first. Now the other y value that we have is 18, and its x value is 0. Yes. Just going to scroll. Now at this point here, we can calculate this out. We can do it by hand or you can plug it into the calculator. Either one works. If we do this by hand, 15 minus 18 is going to be -3. 10 minus 0 is 10. Will -3 over 10 reduce? Is there a common factor between these two? No. So that there is going to be our slope. So we do have the equation of the line. Any questions on this so far? Now we still need to interpret the slope. So again, the x is the number of payments. So we're saying for every 10 payments, the total balance is decreasing by what? 3, yes? But specifically, if we look back at the graph, it's in what? Thousands of. So it's saying for every 10 payments, we're decreasing the balance by not just 3, but 3,000. Text pin for every 10 payments, the balance decreases by $3,000. Decreased by $3,000. Any questions on this here so far? Now there's one last thing, because if we look back, we did find the equation of a line. We did interpret the slope and y-intercept. Now we just need to figure out what is the remaining balance after 36 payments. Now again, for this here, the number of payments is going to be x. On the last one, the number that they gave us to solve for or find its corresponding value was y. So for this one here, we'll have -3/10, and we're plugging 36 in for x. So this time they wanted us to find the value of y. How much is left? How much is the balance after 36 payments? Since payments is x, we're going to plug that number in for x. Any questions on how we got to this point here? Now looking at this here, this entire side of the equation are all numbers. Yes, there are no variables here. So what we could do at this point is type the whole thing into the calculator and let it solve it for us. We don't have to do this by hand. Now if we type this entire thing into the calculator, we would get 7.2. This here will work out to be 7.2. Yes, sir. So the negative 3/10, so the 3 on top is telling us how much of the balance is increasing or decreasing. Now, according to the table, or graph, it's by thousands of, by thousands of dollars. So a decrease in 3 is actually $3,000, not just 3. Any other questions on this here? So the remaining balance after 36 months is $7,200. Any other questions on this problem here? Okay. We're going to go on and look at the next one here. So for this one here, the graph shows the distance Allison hikes in 8x hours. Write an equation of the line. So the first one of the things we need to do is to write the equation of a line. We need to interpret the slope, and then we need to see how long does it take Allison to hike 14 miles traveling at the same rate. So there's 3 parts to this answer. So we need to interpret the slope, we need to find the equation of a line, and determine how long it takes her to travel 14 miles. So we're given this graph here. Now again, we're given this point here, and also 0, 0. Now this one, they did give us the y-intercept, because again, the y-intercept is going to be the point where x is 0, and the corresponding y value will be the y-intercept. So the y-intercept of this graph is 0, because it starts at 0, 0. 0 is where it crosses the y-axis. So that means we can use the y equals mx plus b, because our value of b is going to be 0. Now we just need to find the slope. And the slope for this here is going to be our y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Now for this here, one of the y values that we're given is 7. So that's one of our points, yes. The y value for it is 24.5, and its x value is 7. Now the other point that we're given is 0, 0. So we'll plug in 0 for x and 0 for y1. So we'd have 24.5 over 7. Now we can't leave a fraction and a decimal in the same one, so we'll need to simplify this down. So we could actually plug in the calculator 24.5 divided by 7, and we would get 3.5. So the slope for this equation is 3.5, or we could change it back to a fraction, which would be 7/2. So we have the slope, which is 3.5, or we could rewrite it as 7/2. Any questions on this here? Now, we will get there in a second. We still need to write the equation officially. So y equals mx plus b. Well, our slope is 3.5. We can replace it with m. X plus, well, our value b was 0. So we could add 0, but that'd be the same as y equals 3.5x. So how far is she traveling in 1 hour? Yeah. So if we want to interpret the slope, that's one way we can do it. We can say she travels 3.5 miles every hour. Or in 1 hour, she travels 3.45 miles in 1 hour. Or for every 2 hours, she travels 7 miles. Or for every hour, she travels 3.5 miles. Any one of those works, as long as we're describing what the slope is telling us. Questions on this here? So now the last thing we need to figure out is how long it takes her to travel what? 14 miles. So we can do this exactly as we did the first one. We can set y as 14 and solve for the value of x, yes? Now, if this works out nicely, so for 1 hour, how far does she travel? After 2 hours, because we would do 3.5 plus 3.5, yes? Zero, carry the 1. So she travels 7 miles in 2 hours. So in 3 hours, well, we can add in 4 hours, we can add it again. So how long does it take her to travel 14 miles? 4 hours. So it takes her 4 hours to travel 14 miles. Now we could have set it up as 14 is equal to 3.5x and solve for the value of x. Can we do that by dividing both sides by 3.5? And we told us that x is equal to 4. Either way, we would have gotten to the same thing. Now this method here only works well if the slope will hit that number exactly. If it doesn't hit it exactly, we'll have to do other calculations to get there.